Welcome to our third session for second year students and complete one level students for credit hour system. Today we will talk about primary impression for completely edentulous arches and pouring study coasts. Instruments needed: edentulous coasts, measuring scoop and graduated cup for alginate, rubber bowl and alginate mixing spatula, alginate impression material, Vaseline, proper size stock tray, wax sheet, wax knife, carver pliers, and scissors. These are the instruments. The edentulous coast, measuring scoop, alginate impression material, rubber bowl and mixing spatula, Vaseline, proper size stock tray, either plastic or aluminum, wax sheet, carver, knife, pliers, and scissors. Now let's start our work. First of all, paint your cast with Vaseline to act as a separating medium before you take the impression. The lower cast and the upper cast. After that, you have to select the proper size of stock tray, either plastic or aluminum. We are going to use the aluminum stock trays. To modify the tray, we are going to use pliers and scissors. To be sure that your tray is in the proper size, it has to cover the tuberosity in the upper and the all sulcus area in the cast from right, left, and anterior. Now we have selected this for the upper, and for the lower, your tray should cover all the ridge area and the retromolar area and have proper space between the ridge and the tray itself. Now let's do our modification of the tray. For the modification of the tray, we are going to use first bending of the handle in the form of an L shape, the lower and the upper, to facilitate the trimming in the patient mouse. After that, we are going to use the pliers to either bend the tray inward or outward. Bending is the first step in the modification of the tray. After that, we are going to cut the borders of the tray if needed according to the sulcus in the patient mouse. After cutting all the borders and opening all the frenal area, now we are going to check the tray on the cast, the upper and the lower, and then we have another step, which is protecting the borders of the tray to avoid any injury in the patient mouse. We are going to use a torch and wax sheet to cover these sharp areas to make it smooth if we are going to use it in the patient mouse. So a small strip of wax is going to be added all over the tray on all the borders, as you can see, so there will no sharp areas be present. We will make this in the upper and in the lower, and after doing this, we will retrim the wax in the patient mouse, but as we have casts, we will not do this step. This is for the upper. All the borders are covered, so there is no sharp areas present in the tray before taking the impression. Removing any excess inside the tray using your carver and your torch. Now all the borders are present, smooth, and you can start trimming. In the lower, we are going to do the same, also using a strip of wax to cover all the borders of the tray to avoid any sharp areas before taking the impression. Now you are sure that your tray borders are all smooth, ready for taking the primary impression in the patient mouth, performing all border molding and avoiding any injury to the patient's mucosa. Don't forget the lingual side of the tray in the lower, all frenal area and all the borders should be covered with wax to avoid any injury to the patient's mucosa. Also, as in the upper, be sure that all your borders are smooth. Now for taking the impression. For this cast, we are going to use the ratio of 1:1, 1 powder scoop to 1 part water. Here we used 2 scoops of alginate and 2 parts of water. As you can see, take the first scoop, don't press it, just use a knife and remove the excess from the scoop, add it in your mixing bowl and add the 2 parts of water as graduated in the measuring cup and start your mixing. First, incorporate all water into the powder. Here we used alginate with color coding. The color indicates the mixing step and the working time before you make the impression. Here, pressing all the alginate mix against the walls of the rubber bowl using your spatula so you can get proper creamy mix without any air bubbles, smooth, and now it's turning into pale orange and is ready to be taken into 1 scoop, added in your stock tray. Now it's ready to be inserted in the patient mouth, and here on the cast, use some water to make the surface smooth, inserting the tray posterior first, then anterior. Press till you are sure that all the borders are getting alginate in them. And now start doing trimming. Here we are using our fingers instead of the anatomical trimming by the lips and cheeks in the patient mouth. Follow the manufacturer orders for the mixing time, working time, and setting time inside the patient mouth or here on the cast. Make sure that all your borders are smooth. Of course, the patient's saliva will make this smoothing, but here on the cast we are using water and our fingers instead of trimming by patient's muscles. And now we are ready to remove it from the cast. As you can see, all the borders are present. The excess amount outside can be removed using a carver or a knife. And we have to set it aside. And for the lower impression, we are going to do the same steps, the same mixing steps, and the same order in taking the impression. As you can see, the mixing against the rubber bowl until the color turns into orange, and then take your creamy mix into your tray, make it smooth, place it on the cast. Be sure you are pressing from posterior, then anterior. Don't forget the tongue side, and do the trimming as in the upper. Now we are going to remove all the excess parts, and of course this is not done in the clinic. In the clinic you will have all the borders done by the patient trimming. These are the final primary impressions. Take care. Don't leave your impression in the air, because it will get dry and separate from the impression tray, as you can see, and will not record the proper details. Now for the pouring part. To pour the impression, you need plaster of Paris, water, and a rubber bowl and spatula for mixing. We have a base former to make the base of the cast. Now let's mix the plaster of Paris. We are going to use what's called double pouring technique. First we need a creamy mix to get all the details of the primary impression. We are going to pour the first layer of the plaster inside our impression, as you will see, to get all the details that we want. We are adding a little bit of water to make it more creamy. Then pouring our first layer, tapping the impression on the sides of the rubber bowl to get out all the air bubbles that we don't need, so all the details are recorded. Keep pouring in layers and tapping the impression against the walls of the rubber bowl. Remove any excess. And now leave it to dry. For the second layer, make a little bit thicker mix, add it in the base former, and now invert your impression into the base former and trim the lingual side and keep adding any missing parts until you get smooth surface. And the advantage of the base former is that you don't need trimming after you remove the cast from the base former, and now you have your study cast ready for the next step. Thank you so much, and see you next session for special tray.